Resident Evil might be one of my favorites, if not my favorite gaming franchise of all time. Now that I've played the latest entry into the series, Resident Evil 8 Village, I figured it'd be a good time to pit the games up against each other and see how they stack up in 2021. I recently finished the main campaign of Resident Evil Village, and I have to say it's phenomenal. It lived up to all my expectations and then some. How will Resident Evil 8 compare to other titles in the series like Resident Evil 1 and 2 remakes, Resident Evil 4, and Resident Evil 7? In this video, I will give my opinion on what I think are the top 10 Resident Evil games of all time. Keep in mind, these are just my opinions, and this list is meant to be subjective rather than objective. So please don't be too upset if your favorite Resi title doesn't make it, or gets cut and gets a lower ranking than you would have liked. So without further ado, here are my top 10 Resident Evil games of all time. I'm kicking this list off with the boulder punching action of Resident Evil 5. I absolutely devoured this game when it came out, and spent countless hours staying up late playing this game with a buddy of mine. Resident Evil 5 succeeds where Resident Evil 6 failed so hard. This game lacks the horror elements of its predecessors, but succeeds with its over-the-top action, stellar gameplay, and emphasis on co-op. This game lacks many of the core elements that make a Resident Evil, well, a Resident Evil. And for that, I'm giving it the number 10 spot on this list. The number 9 spot on this list goes to the one that started it all. The OG Resident Evil on the PlayStation 1. This game set in motion the survival horror craze in gaming and single-handedly defined a genre. Exploring the Spencer Mansion as Jill or Chris in the original was truly a terrifying experience. This game came out in 1996 and has since been remade, with the remake being one of the best video games ever released. The gaming industry as a whole truly owes a lot to this title. I'm giving it the number 9 spot on this list because it has since been surpassed by its sequels and spin-offs it spawned. Which is a testament to its success, right? Coming in at number 8 is perhaps the most underrated title on this list, and that's Resident Evil Code Veronica. This game sees Claire and Chris Redfield off exploring a remote island, as well as a research facility on Antarctica. This game has one of the most interesting stories in the series and should not be missed. This game initially came out in 2000 on the Sega Dreamcast, and is one of the games in the series that is long overdue for a remake. One can only hope. If you're a Resident Evil fan, but have only played the modern games, Code Veronica is one that's worth going back to, and has aged better than others on this list. Code Veronica is definitely a classic and worthy of a spot on this list. There's been a lot of controversy surrounding 2020's Resident Evil 3 Remake, and for good reason. This game did strip out a lot of content from the original and took the terror away from Nemesis by making his sections a mostly on-rails experience. However, this game is still great in many ways. This game may very well be the best Resi from a controls and gameplay perspective. Controlling Carlos and Jill feels amazing, and is definitely a high point for the series. Jill in particular feels more human and fleshed out than ever. It's just a shame it all came to an end way too quickly, taking only a couple of hours to complete the entire game. Unfortunately, there are just too many issues to be ignored when it comes to Resident Evil 3 Remake, and for that reason, this game unfortunately gets the number 7 spot on this list.
Could be dreaming.
The number 6 spot on this list goes to the original Resident Evil 3 on PlayStation 1. This in fact was the first Resident Evil game I ever played, way back in 1999. I would stay up late on weekends and watch my dad play this game. I remember just how terrifying a nemesis felt in this original game. It's really a shame he was neutered so heavily in the 2020 remake. This game tried something new and moved away from the direction of the first two games, and it's safe to say that it paid off in spades. Resident Evil 3 is the one that kicked it all off for me, and for that reason, this game gets the number 6 spot on this list. Coming in at the number 5 spot, we have the stellar Resident Evil 4. This game was the biggest departure yet in the Resident Evil franchise, and yet remains many people's favorite Resi game to this day. This game has some of the most fun and addicting gameplay in the entire series, and you just can't help but feel like a badass playing as Leon S. Kennedy. Big things are coming for Resident Evil 4 in the future, with Resident Evil 4 VR and a Resident Evil 4 remake in the works. This game is definitely prolific and has been on countless consoles over the year, and for good reason. It's fantastic. There are just a few other games that beat it, so for that reason, Resident Evil 4 gets the number 5 spot on this list. Coming in at number 4 on this list is none other than Resident Evil 7. Resident Evil 7 is the game that single-handedly saved the Resident Evil franchise after the abomination that was Resident Evil 6. This game simultaneously took the series back to its roots and tried something new with the first-person perspective, despite it being highly controversial. This game also brought back the horror element to Resident Evil, and with the exception of a certain part in Resident Evil 8, it is hands down the scariest game in the series, bar none. And for these reasons, the fantastic Resident Evil 7 gets the number 4 spot on this list. And now for the moment you've all been waiting for. At the number 3 spot on this list is the latest entry in the series, Resident Evil 8 Village. This game is the perfect blend of action, gut-wrenching horror, suspense, and puzzle solving. The gameplay loop of this game is fun and addicting. It almost seems to have a sort of RPG element to it that makes it highly enjoyable. Without spoiling anything, this game has one of the best twists for an ending in gaming, and gets me excited for where the franchise is headed. The game is fairly short at about 8 to 10 hours, but it never overstays its welcome. The game also features the return of the Mercenaries mode, which is absolutely fantastic, and gives you more to do after finishing the main campaign. My only complaint is there wasn't more Lady Dimitris and her 3 daughters. Oh well, maybe we'll see more of them if we ever get DLC for this title. With that being said, this is still an excellent entry in the Resident Evil franchise, and worthy of the number 3 spot on this list. Coming in as the runner-up on this list is the remake of the original Resident Evil game from 1996, but more specifically, the 2014 HD remaster on consoles and PC. This game really contains the essence of what it means to be a Resident Evil game, and what it means to be a good Resident Evil game at that. This is the standard for what a remake of a game should look like. The extra content they added to this remake is masterful, with the Lisa Trevor story being one of the grimmest and most disturbing in the series' history. The gameplay is as tight as ever, and is the perfect balance of horror, puzzle solving, and combat. The Spencer Mansion is absolutely dripping with atmosphere in this remake, and exploring it never really gets old. This game is truly a timeless classic. If you haven't checked out the RE1 remake and you're a fan of the modern Resident Evil games, I highly suggest you do so. This one does not disappoint. Coming in at number 1 and taking the crown is the 2019 remake of Resident Evil 2. This is regarded by many to be the greatest Resident Evil game ever made, and it's really hard to disagree. This game features multiple campaigns, with Leon and Claire, each putting an interesting take on the story of the downfall of the RCPD and Raccoon City itself. This game is much slower paced and longer than its sequel, and it benefits greatly from that. Mr. X is without a doubt the best stalker enemy in the entire franchise, and oppresses you through most of your journey. This game is modern Resident Evil perfected when it comes down to it. The game is very accessible, and would be a great entry point for someone new to the franchise wanting to see what Resident Evil is all about. This game is absolutely packed to the brim with content, and combines the best of classic Resident Evil with the best of modern Resident Evil. For these reasons, I give Resident Evil 2 Remake the number 1 spot on this list. Well, that wraps up my list of the top 10 best Resident Evil games of all time. After playing Resident Evil 8 Village, I'm very excited to see where the franchise will go next. Resident Evil Village is already showing some pretty spectacular sales numbers, so it seems like Resident Evil isn't going anywhere anytime soon. At the end of the day, Resident Evil 2 Remake takes the top spot and is the game that is yet to be surpassed. Who knows, maybe Resident Evil 9 or Resident Evil 4 Remake will knock it off its throne one day. Anyways, let me guys know what you thought of this list. What are your favorite Resident Evil games of all time? If you enjoy this list, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and bang that bell. I have more Resident Evil content coming down the pipeline, so stay tuned. Until next time, I'm out. Peace.